You know, the United States just pulled off one of the biggest economic power plays in modern history. And it happened so fast across two of the world's most critical industries that pretty much nobody even saw it coming. We're talking about seizing control of another country's entire oil supply and, at the exact same time, the world's most advanced technology. Okay, let's get into this.
So the big question we're tackling here is this. How did Washington manage to orchestrate a takeover of two absolutely vital global markets? One for black gold and the other for silicon gold. Because as we're about to see, these were not random events. Nope, they were calculated moves in a much larger and much newer global game.
It really all kicked off with this number, $500 million. That's how much the first batch of Venezuelan oil was worth. The crazy part? It wasn't sold by Venezuela. It was sold by the U.S. Department of Energy just days after a wild military operation that saw the country's president captured.
And get this, at almost the exact same time, the administration dropped this bombshell, a 25% tax, not on foreign stuff, but on the most valuable AI chips made by America's own tech giants. It was a move that, honestly, a lot of legal experts thought was straight up impossible under the Constitution.
So these two events, which seem totally unrelated, are actually just two chapters from the same brand new economic playbook. And it's a playbook that is completely rewriting the rules of global trade and who controls what right in front of us. So let's break down exactly how they pulled it off.
First up, let's talk about the oil. This is really the story of how the U.S. government basically stepped in and became the CEO of Petróleos de Venezuela, the state-owned oil company of a sovereign nation. What is just so stunning when you look at this timeline is the speed. I mean, January 3rd, U.S. Special Forces capture President Maduro. Just 11 days later, on January 14th, the U.S. government is already selling off the country's oil. That is a terrifyingly efficient pipeline from military action straight to economic control.
But the real genius move, if you want to call it that, is where the money goes. See, the revenue doesn't go to Venezuela. It gets funneled into this special escrow account in Qatar. And here's the kicker. Not a single penny can be taken out of that account without a thumbs up from the U.S. government. This is the financial choke point. It's how they guarantee total control.
So naturally, this has set off massive alarm bells all over the world. As the leading economist Francisco Rodriguez put it, this whole thing is happening in a legal vacuum. What he means by that is there are no laws, no international agreements to cover a situation like this. One country just deciding to seize and sell another country's main resource? We are in completely uncharted territory here.
And this comparison right here really shows you just how unheard of this is. Remember the UN's Oil for Food program in Iraq? Well, that was backed by the Security Council. It had international oversight. The Venezuelan situation? It's a unilateral American show. The U.S. Treasury holds all the keys to the kingdom and the bank.
Now, before we all assume this means a ton of cheap gas is on the way, let's get a reality check. Venezuelan crude oil is this heavy, sludgy stuff that's super expensive to refine. Plus, the country's entire infrastructure is just wrecked. It's going to take billions of dollars and years of work just to get production back to normal. That 10–12% growth they're projecting, that isn't a country thriving. That's a country just trying to survive.
Okay, so now let's pivot from black gold to silicon gold. Because while all this oil drama was unfolding, the administration rolled out an equally gutsy move, a new tax aimed right at the crown jewels of American technology.
And this created a massive legal puzzle. The U.S. Constitution is super clear. The government is not allowed to tax its own country's exports. So how in the world could they slap a 25% tariff on chips that American companies like Nvidia and AMD are selling to the rest of the world?
Welcome to what people are already calling the loophole of the century. The government basically weaponized logistics. Here's how it works. Step 1. An advanced chip gets made in Taiwan. Step 2, instead of going straight to the customer in, say, China, it now has to be shipped to the U.S. first for testing. The second it lands on U.S. soil, boom, it's magically considered an import. Step 3, the 25% tariff gets applied, and then finally that freshly taxed chip gets sent on its way.
To put it another way, imagine you make furniture in Vietnam and your customer is in Japan. This rule would be like the U.S. government forcing you to ship that furniture all the way to Los Angeles first, pay a tax on it there, and then you can send it across the Pacific to Tokyo. It's a logistical headache designed to do one thing and one thing only: create a taxable event out of thin air.
And you want to know the most surprising part of all this? Wall Street basically just shrugged.
You'd think a new 25% tax would absolutely crush these stocks, but look at this. Nvidia is up 39% over the past year. AMD is up a staggering 92%. It seems like investors are betting the government doesn't want to kill the golden goose. It just wants a piece of the golden eggs.
Okay, so now let's connect the dots. When you put the oil fields in Venezuela and the chip factories in Taiwan side by side, you start to realize these aren't two different stories. They are two fronts in the exact same overarching global strategy.
Right? With Venezuelan oil, you've got direct control of a physical resource, and it's managed through a financial choke point, that bank account in Qatar. With AI chips, you've got control of a digital resource, managed through a logistical choke point, that mandatory shipping detour through the US. The theme here is impossible to miss. This is a brand new strategy of direct economic control over the world's most critical asset.
And this new strategy has already started a massive chain reaction. Look at China. The country is pouring over $100 billion into building its own homegrown chip industry. And the goal is incredibly simple. Create a supply chain that doesn't have to go anywhere near these new American choke points.
Look, this new playbook is aggressive, it's bold, and right now it looks like it's working. But it forces us to ask a really big question. What happens next? What happens when the rest of the world decides they're tired of playing a game where America not only makes the rules, but can change them whenever it feels like it?